Hello and welcome to The Print. I am Neelam Pandey. Meet our guest Rashmi Samant, who had hit international headlines over some of her social media posts that had led to her stepping down from her position as the president-elect of the Oxford University Student Union. Samant has now authored a book based on her experiences. So let's hear from her. Before I come to your experiences, which you have recounted in your book, can you tell our viewers a little about what exactly happened in the university? There's a bit of confusion. Were you elected, for a period of 1 year? Did you step down immediately after being elected? What exactly happened?
Well, Neelam ji, I come from a very small town on the coastal part of Karnataka called Udupi. I
Right.
went on to study at the University of Oxford, first generation university graduate. And whilst I was there, I ran for the president's position, the president of the Students' Union, which is considered quite prestigious. And I was elected with a historic margin, the first Indian female president of the Oxford University Students' Union. And that was something that had hit headlines both in the United Kingdom, also in the rest of the Western world, and back in Bharat. So there was a lot of celebration going on. Even the British High Commissioner to Bharat was celebrating this as a diplomatic success between Bharat and UK. What followed the sort of election? So I was elected for a period of 1 year. The presidency goes on for 1 year. And soon after I was elected to the position on, I think, post 10th of February 2021, there was this subtle bullying and harassment that had started. I started getting horribly racist comments and jokes sent to me through anonymous handles, both on my Instagram, on my LinkedIn, even my university email ID, the official Oxford, student university email ID that we have for work. Horribly racist, comparing my face to a black horse and stuff like that. So all of the ad hominem racist attacks that usually happen were happening. Post that, there was a professor, I think, at the history department who wrote out a horribly racist essay. And there was a picture of my parents taken from my mother's old, Facebook sort of posting, which had Jai Shri Ram caption written on her. It's her faith, it's her way of expressing it. And somehow that was taken as proof that I am an extremist. And the fact that I come from Udupi was called into question because he claimed that Udupi was the hotbed of Hindutva extremism. So the essay, which was put out in public, actually it is still available to the public and it is reproduced in the book itself, quotes Rashmi, the Hindu president of Oxford University Students Union, blah, 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 comes from coastal Karnataka, which is hotbed of Hindutva, etc., etc. Tells E! News Oxford is not ready for a Hindu president. So this was the sort of diatribe that happened. And mind me, Neelam ji, I had never brought out my faith anywhere during my campaign or before. I've just been a, self-practicing Hindu, and it's never been a part of my public life or my life at Oxford. It was something very private to me, but it was something that was raised not by me, but by people who had an issue with my identity and connected it to my presidency and used it as leverage to have me step down.
Right. On Wednesday during the book launch, you said, and I quote, the sentiment at Oxford University was that colonization was a positive experience, that the Bengal famine was caused by the Hindu Mahasabha and not Churchill. Well, you've used very strong words. Can you explain why are you saying this about, your alma mater, Oxford?
Neelam ji, this is not something I'm saying. I'm simply quoting people. Whilst I was running for the president's position, there was a debate, and it is still up on YouTube. I was asked this question. I was asked, Rashmi, why are you pursuing a policy of decolonization on campus, whilst colonization was a positive experience for the indigenous people, such as yourself and your ancestors. I'm just quoting what they say. And the matter about Hindu Mahasabha, there's actually a study which I've quoted in my book. There's a journal article written by an Oxford academic, published by the Oxford University Press, which is quite famous across the world, which says that the Bengal famine was caused by the Hindu Mahasabha and not by Winston Churchill. So it's not me saying these things. I'm just trying to bring up and question critically the sort of ideas that the West and Oxford, my alma mater, has about my country, because I do believe that my primary allegiance is to my country and my people, and not to a university that I went to for a degree for a year or two.
Well, just to take you back in 2021, when you had to step down, Oxford-based societies had also come up with some statements, and they had denied that you did not have to resign either because of your nationality or religion, and they had labeled, the entire narrative as misleading. How do you counter that?
Well, Neelamji, I'm actually very happy you bring up this question. The three societies were Oxford India Society, Oxford South Asian Society, and Oxford Hindu Society. And they weren't registered with the University of Oxford at the time. So even today, we can claim to be maybe the Print Society of Oxford and put out a statement. So that does not make it the official statement of the university, because they are in no way affiliated to the university. Now, I don't know why that particular statement was amplified, even if it was put out on Instagram, by a society that was claiming to be affiliated to Oxford, but was nowhere affiliated to them.
Right.
And secondly, I think the facts remain that there was no proof that they presented to say that the narrative was misleading. It was just their opinion, whilst my entire statement that I was persecuted based on my religious identity and my background stems from an open letter and a racist essay that a University of Oxford history professor put out in public. So what I'm saying is based on a letter which is out in public for everybody to see. So it's based on proof. And what they're saying is basically an ad hominem attack made by people with little credibility. And I mean, I think it's up to the people to make up their minds as to what their intention and what their motivation was to discount a lived experience of a Bharatiya student at Oxford, the proof of which was available for everybody to see. Now you can clearly see that none of these societies condemn the fact that a history professor at Oxford had the audacity to say that Oxford is not ready for a Hindu president. And I think that is troubling, and that is something that needs to be questioned and addressed in the long run, because that's the only way we can counter hate speech, be it against any community.
Could you tell us a little about your journey so far? You spoke about, your education, your middle class upbringing, but could you give us a little insight into how did you reach Oxford?
Well, Neelamji, I think small towns are often taken for a misnomer, as idyllic, existence, that small town, small dreams. But I think small town people have the highest of aspirations and ambitions. I think it comes partly because we see clear skies at night and we see the stars, really, and highly ambitious people, really. I went to Oxford. I was actually very happy because I think I was under the Western construct as a product of Macaulay education system, that Oxford University is indeed, that's the place to be. But I think a couple of months down the line, I started realizing how there was this bloody colonial history there, and how every day there were departments dedicated with resources towards glorifying that kind of colonial history. They weren't addressing it for what it was, and there was no sort of a healthy debate on the kind of human rights violations which have happened across the world in the name of colonization. it was just being glorified, and there were multiple exercises going around to simply justify whitewash colonization. And I think that's when I started realizing that, okay, this is not such a great place after all, and that these constructs need to be addressed, because academia being top down, whatever gets discussed there, whatever gets theorized there, ultimately ends up in every campus, including Bharatiya campuses. And I thought it was not the right way to speak about people by hiding the truth about people who have suffered, and simply glorifying Westerners who actually indulged in loot and massacres across the world. So it was a plain campaign. I fashioned my campaign after that, and my entire presidential bit was just to create awareness about decolonization and to speak the Indian story, because the presidential campaign at Oxford is all about big speeches, big debates. So it's a great opportunity to bring down a contrarian perspective in a respectful manner, because that's what I wanted to do: bring my thoughts, bring the heritage of Bharat, and bring the fact that we were an evolved civilization way before the British to the people, and ensure that that Western construct about the East and Bharat basically being uncivilized before colonization goes away. And I never expected to win. It was just means to kind of bring in awareness, but then I won, and I think that reinforced the fact that if you shoot for the moon, you do indeed land among the stars. We've all had to walk by streets where slave owners are put on a pedestal. Cecil Rhodes, his statue is still on a pedestal on Oriel Street. Christopher Codrington, until very recently, was in the center of the All Souls Library. At least now his statue has been, no, his statue still remains. I think the library has been renamed. Once I became president, I also saw the other side of things, how there is this inherent hatred towards diversity. I realized diversity in the West is just a fancy word. It's symbolism. As long as you bring diversity to the table in the form of diversity weeks, where you hang up flags from different countries and host a couple of talks, it's okay. The minute diversity becomes a conversation about changing the way we look at things, about changing syllabus, about changing popular theories, about changing discourses in popular culture, academia, and general society, that's when it's considered problematic. And people try everything to make it go away, to make these things go away. In fact, I think the way I was attacked is a very big symbol of that. I was called racist, transphobic, and anti-Semitic. And if you look at these accusations from a legal perspective, or a perspective of a commoner in society as a global citizen, you will find that none of my statements, these so-called captions on my Instagram account, were offensive in the least bit. They were not offensive. They were not intolerant in any way. It was just, what do you say, appropriated, misappropriated, and branded in a convenient manner to get rid of me. The Chinese have this saying from the time of Mao, that if you truly want to get rid of someone, you'll find your way. Basically, that's what they did. It was ad hominem attacks coupled with blatant accusations with no legal standing at all whatsoever. Let alone legal standing. Even if you read the statements which they so manufactured to be offensive, you will find they weren't offensive in the least bit. They weren't anti-Semitic in the least bit. In fact, the statement I made about the Holocaust was respectful, and it actually called upon society to be more tolerant in a way that we do not repeat these mistakes of the past, and we leave a better legacy for the future. So that's what it called for. And just because there was a pun in that statement, a pun is a figure of speech, they said it was somehow anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism is, defined by the International Human Rights Association. The IRHA has defined it. And, leaving a full stop or adding an extra comma doesn't make you insensitive. It is simply trying to find offense where there exists none, and
But
trying
at
to
that
defame
point,
people.
no, I was just saying
Sorry?
that at that point you had said that you were young and you did not know better. Are you saying that the tweets or the social media posts, are you at all saying that there was nothing wrong with it?
Yeah, I am. And I, explain it in the book. I actually I've put in screenshots of the tweets and of they were not tweets, they were captions to my photos from 2017, 2015, when I was a teenager traveling the world. I've put the full screenshot of the pictures and the captions. And I've actually discussed it. Where's the offense, really? Uh, the statement that I gave out, that I was young, I didn't say I was young and I didn't know better. I said that, people are taking undue offense at these statements, and they need to realize that I'm a non-native English speaker, even if they think that a pun is offensive, which I don't think is. But I was trying to say that, let's come to a consensus. I was trying to calm people down, and I said that I apologize because I want us to move forward. I was trying to take the high road, like all Bharatiya people do. We always try to take the high road, and we try to, nullify everybody. We try to calm everybody down. That was what I was trying to say. I didn't say that, I made a mistake. Those tweets are up for everybody to analyze. It is up for lawyers, common citizens, journalists, people, who dictate popular culture to analyze. And if they can prove that it was offensive, I will apologize. But I don't think they were offensive. And my apology, my call for peace, was my way of taking the high road and asking people to calm down, because it had devolved to a place where my address was being doxed online, where I was getting death threats by the day, and my presidency was being jeopardized. And I think any president or any leader is worth his salt only when he chooses to take the high road.
Right. So what you did at the Oxford University, correct me if I'm wrong, seems to have endeared you to the Sangh Parivar here. Many senior RSS functionaries, BJP ministers, they have been launching your book. So when did this association, if at all, started with the RSS and the BJP, and how do you explain this association?
Well, for me, I think I'm a common Bharatiya citizen. And for me, speaking about Bharat and speaking about where we stand and what our civilizational history is from a respectful position is what matters to me. And I cannot take organizations or people who would unduly disrespect Bharat in an ad hominem attack, without facts, devoid of facts, and put out statements that completely, challenge our core identity. I mean, saying that we were uncivilized before the British came along, I think is absolutely wrong for a extremely highly, evolved ancient civilization that contributed up to 33% of the world's GDP. The book has been launched and appreciated by people across the board. I think recently there's been a Congress person who's part of the Mahila Ayog of Congress, a very senior ranking person in the Congress, who has also praised the book and shared it to her story on social media. So I think people who love Bharat have all been up in arms promoting the book. And I have no qualms, if people in power, if people who are taking up positions in society, dictating policy in society, dictating the discourse in society, be it the Sangh Parivar, which has been doing so much in society, so much seva paropakara, be it the BJP, who's currently the ruling government since 2014. If they want to take it forward, I think it's well and good that they are taking it forward, because it's not just my story, it is the story of our people as well. And the fact that we cannot be insulted anymore, and that if you're coming at us, then you better come at us with facts and not with ad hominem attacks which are rooted in Western supremacy.
And do you want to take a plunge into politics? Because many are talking about that, you've written your experiences, your closeness with the RSS, the BJP, and at the same time, how youth should also be, channelizing their energy for the greater good. So do you think you will be at all in future thinking about politics?
Well, Neelam ji, I'm very young. I think I'm just 24 years old. And if you look into the constitution, we're not eligible to run for anything at all. So I think this is a very premature question. And secondly, I believe that this book, writing about this experience, is, it is just my way to get over the trauma of what I, had to face. And I did survive. And I want to send out a message that, we Bharatiya people, unfortunately, we are discriminated, based on our color, based on our race, based on where we come from, for the for the food we eat, for the clothes we wear. But we've never taken discrimination as an excuse not to excel. We have excelled despite everything. You can see this in people of Bharatiya origin across the world, be it Rishi Sunak, who keeps getting attacked day in and day out, and be
Is
it
that
other people
identity?
of Bharatiya origin, be it Vivek Ramaswamy. Sorry, yes. So Rishi Sunak was ridiculed by the British media. Priti Patel was ridiculed. There was a cartoon of her as a cow, I think in the Daily Guardian, which I've actually included in this book. So Hindus get ridiculed on a daily basis. There was a very defamatory article about Rishi Sunak in the Critic magazine, along with, they also took my name as well, saying that somehow being proud Hindus is advancing some kind of Modi rule in India, whilst these have nothing in common.
And how do you describe yourself politically, on the right, extreme right, on the center, left, and why, politically and ideologically?
Well, Neelam ji, I believe that I stand with the truth politically, ideologically, philosophically. If there's something wrong going on anywhere, be rest assured, I will always stand with the victims and, stand up for what's wrong in society, really. But my stance will never be devoid of facts. If there's no fact and if there's no truth, then I will never toe a particular philosophical, ideological, or political line.
As you pointed out that you graduated, so what have you been doing, nowadays, and what is next for you?
Well, Neelam, as soon as I graduated, I worked at the British Parliament. There was this entire rigmarole that went around on social media that if you get cancelled and if you get, branded like this, then you will never be able to work. So I decided to get the toughest job out there with the harshest of background checks, which was literally to work at the British Parliament and prove everybody wrong that this sort of online vilification, ad hominem attacks, and blackmail does not get people anywhere. It was used as blackmail against me. Some of the students came up to me and said, "You better resign now, otherwise this will hamper your future for the rest of time." So it was really a message. I did a short contract there. I've come back to India, which is something I've always wanted to do, post my short contract at the British Parliament. And I run a group of companies here. So you can say I'm an entrepreneur and I'm in the finance sector. And we are hoping to expand to renewable energy very soon because that's something I have my degree in.
Wonderful. You also, what are your views about I've already spoken about the Sangh Parivar, about the RSS, considering, their image abroad is also not seen a positive light. You talked about, how Hindus are viewed. Once you were inside, the university, then you realized what it was all about. So if we talk about the RSS, generally, whenever the perception that is there abroad is, as I said, not really in a positive light.
Well, Neelam ji, I think there are two kinds of images, and I think we need to look at both sides of things. I think the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh abroad, there is always a double lens that goes in. There's one section that see it for the service that they do, the service that they did globally through Seva. In fact, even founders, I think, of Twitter have donated to their cause of Seva. So there's this one side of things wherein they are, extolled for the work that they do, for the service that they do, for bringing together societies, for bringing together communities, right, for building bridges with communities which have similar pasts, like the Jewish community.
On Wednesday during the book launch, you also spoke about Prime Minister Narendra Modi and how, despite getting a clean chit in the Godhra riots, the popular media narrative about him is negative. So what exactly you meant by that? And, have you had a chance to interact with him now that your book is out? Yeah.
Well, Neelam ji, unfortunately, I haven't met with Prime Minister Modi, but fortunately, the only Prime Minister I've met with is Atal Bihari Vajpayee when I was a toddler. So that's the only interaction I've had with any of our Bharatiya Prime Ministers. But that being said, I think it is the nature of how stories are told across the world. The West sees no benefit in pushing stories that extol a positive image of the Bharatiya people. They've been at it even after the successful Chandrayaan 3 mission landing. They went on to say India needs to do something else and not be doing moon missions. So I think there's always this ad hominem attack that happens. Prime Minister Modi was cleared by the Supreme Court, and I think it's the highest court of this country and something that all other democracies need to respect. But the BBC, which is a state-owned, state-funded media of the United Kingdom, came up with a documentary of opinions and which did not take the Supreme Court verdict into account whilst telling a story of the Godhra riots. And this is the kind of, biased narratives, biased storytelling to set popular perception among people and, have them like a particular ideology or not. I think that is something I find extremely problematic.
Well, can you explain a little more about your book, A Hindu in Oxford? What can we expect in the book? What kind of bullying and harassment, you have sort of elaborated your experiences in the book. If you could just throw some light on that.
Neelam ji, so it's not a book of opinions. It's definitely not a book of stories. So what has happened in the book is, even if you start from the first page, it is simply letters, emails, public posts made by different people along with sources. So it is just that, it's a collection of that. And when you go through that in a sequence of how they happened, so it's all date wise. So it starts from the least recent to the most recent sort of posting of things. You will see the story. So the story comes from facts. So you follow the facts to really understand what really happened at Oxford post Feb 2021, when I was elected president of the Oxford University Students' Union. It's actually very satirical, really, because I never said I was a Hindu in Oxford. It was them. It was people with problems against Hindu dharma who said she's a Hindu, and that was somehow taken as justification to give a free pass to attack me. And I explore that psychology as well, about how the Hindu identity has become a stereotypical villain, globally in academia, and how there have been works consistently that have come out in the global academic circles which have vilified this identity without any proof. And all of that sort of gets explored. It's actually very funny, because I didn't know the word Hinduphobia until I think March or April 2021, whilst all of these articles are coming out which are saying Oxford's not ready for a Hindu president. I still don't know what's going on, really. I didn't know that it was this deep stereotypical hate against Hindu identity, which has been seeded through the general hatred for polytheistic faiths over 1,000 years, and how that came to a full boil when I became president and my Hindu identity was brought to the fore after thorough stalking of my mother by a history faculty at the University of Oxford. So it's also a story of me trying to wrap my head around how hatred and the psychology of hatred exists, how this hatred has essentially resulted in the extinction of most polytheistic faiths across the world. None of the polytheistic faiths do thrive. Hindu dharma is the only polytheistic faith that thrives. All of the others are monotheistic.
I was saying that a lot of people are saying that, if your experiences are true and this is what you, went through in the Oxford University, the minority in India is going through much worse. So, no efforts are being made by the government, by the academia. How do you respond to that?
Well, Neelam ji, I believe in looking at demographies when we need to talk about persecution of minorities. The minorities in Bharat have only grown in number, and their indices are just improving, be it education, be it women empowerment. Laws are being brought in to uplift women in minority communities from previously, apathetic conditions. So I truly believe that we need more laws. We abolished triple talaq. for the second largest majority now, which was previously a very small minority at the time of independence. And I believe we need to do more to empower their women, to uplift the women, and to also empower and bring more education within the community as well, and empower them to get the best sort of education that everybody does. I'm sure that the current regime is dedicated to that. The abolishment of triple talaq was a very strong message that minorities in this country do have, a very strong voice, because you can see this in contrast to the minorities in our neighboring country, which was a part of this great country, Pakistan, which was part of Bharat prior to 1947. The minorities there have shrunk to mere 1 or 2% from over 12%. That, I think, tells the story. And here, the way the population has doubled, tripled, and quadrupled says that, okay, that the country is truly trying to accommodate the minorities, and it's doing a lot to ensure that there's no persecution of minority. And we can do more, and I'm sure the country will do, to make sure that people are empowered in the right way.
You mentioned your mother and how they found Jai Shri Ram in one of her posts. Just wanted to find out, you had mentioned that you would be filing a defamation suit against that professor. So what happened there?
Well, I never mentioned I would file a defamation suit. There was a criminal complaint because it tantamounts to hate speech in UK, and there was an internal investigation. Unfortunately, in the UK, the legal system is very different compared to Bharat. There, the onus lies upon the complainant to bring up the proofs. So I couldn't pursue that route because it would be financially draining for me, given how the system is over there. But unfortunately, every faith has hate speech defined for them. So anti-Semitism is defined through IHRA in the British legal system. IHRA defines anti-Semitism for hatred against the Jewish community. And it is, it's a part of the British legal system, and it's a part of the British police system as well. And it is used from time to time to address hate speech against the Jewish people. The same extends to the Islamic community as well. Islamophobia is defined within legal structures, and it is adopted by police departments, and there's a proper structure.
Right.
Unfortunately, Hinduphobia is not even recognized by word or dictionaries. So I think there's a long way to go before hatred against Hindus and polytheistic faiths is institutionalized. This kind of hatred addressed institutionalized for it to gain legitimacy. Unfortunately, we come under the broader spectrum of hate speech, and that does not have any scope for sensitivities of religious hate speech, religion-based hate speech. If the same statement was made against a Jewish person or a Muslim, there would have been immediate action because it is defined for each of these faiths. And I think it's shortcoming of our own faith, really. We haven't lobbied for it. So the onus is on us to lobby for these definitions to be adopted by international human rights associations and, police departments and legal structures across the world.
So just for clarity, because as I said, there was some, I could not hear you properly. So you are saying that Hinduphobia as a term is not, sort of identified as a legal term or as used in criminal laws?
Yes, and the definition is also not adopted. Whilst the same is the case for anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, it's already, it's defined and it is adopted. So any hate speech will be immediately addressed because there's a procedure as to how to go about it. Right. Whilst when it comes to Hinduphobia, the definition is neither accepted nor institutionalized in the various avenues which address hate speech and which, take forward the legal stance in these cases. And I think the onus is upon the Hindu community to ensure that the definition gets accepted and becomes a part of legalese across the world.
Well, thank you so much, Rashmi.